Welcome to this week's episode of The Savvy Author. I'm your host, Clara Rose. If you've not ever been with us before, let me be the first to welcome you. Welcome to our show. Every week we talk about all of the things that you need to know to be a savvy author. And then, of course, if you have been here before, welcome back, my friend. This week we're going to talk about something that I've talked about before. I don't think on the show, but if you follow me online, I have talked about this before because I think that it's super important. It is kind of one of the pieces of what we do at The Savvy Author, but it's definitely things that we work on over at Clara Rose and Company and Rosedale Publishing. First, let's talk about the 3 phases of book creation so that you can know how these things fit in. The first phase of creation, of course, is your brainstorm and blueprint. And that's the beginning stages, the foundational stages, if you will, of creating a book. That is analyzing so that you're creating the right book, getting the right content into your book, brainstorming so that we can capture all of the ideas that you have either floating around in your head or you have them perhaps in a tablet, on sticky notes, however you've been getting all of your information collected, and then blueprinting, which is our outline for the structure of your book. It's getting all of those things pulled together in a way that's going to make sense for your reader. And then phase 2, of course, is our create and connect, or correct. And this is where we get all of those words that we have on our brainstorm and blueprint, all of those things onto paper. So the actual writing process, I call it putting your butt in the seat, getting the work done. Then, of course, editing, because everyone needs an editor or 2. Formatting, because everything needs to be formatted for publishing. It's not the way we create it on a Word document. It has to be formatted. And then finally, the third phase, of course, of book creation is publish and promote. And this is where we educate about the options for publishing, and they're vast these days, promoting, getting the word out that you even have a book, and then creating a plan for ongoing sales. Those are the 3 pieces, the 3 phases of creating your own book. Now, each of those phases are way more in depth than what we cover on the show, and that's why I always like to recommend that you hire someone to help you through this process. There are lots of things as an author that you don't know because you're not in the industry, but there are things that will affect you in time if you don't know them and you don't do them correctly. So today I'm going to talk about common mistakes when writing and publishing your book. So these are just the top common mistakes: having no analysis, having no schedule, having no brainstorm, not having a blueprint, and having no accountability in the process. And I'm going to talk about ways that you can avoid them. Now, before we dive into those top, I guess there's 5 of them, common mistakes that people make, I'm going to give you an extra little tidbit that I see all the time. It's probably on my list of number 1 mistakes, but I don't put it on the list because it's way too much to talk about in depth on the show. But I'm going to give you a synopsis. When you publish a book, the ISBN, which is the number attached to your book for life, you can find it on the barcode on the back of your book in numbers. Actually, the barcode represents that, and when it's scanned, the system knows what that number is. And then in the front of any book, you'll find it's usually the second page in, not your title page, but the back side of your title page, or thereabouts in most books. And it says ISBN and a bunch of little numbers. And that number is assigned to your book for life. This book has its own ISBN. The ebook version of this has another ISBN. The audio version coming out will have its own ISBN. Every creative work gets its very own unique ISBN, and it's registered to somebody specific. Now, if a publisher gives you an ISBN, like in traditional publishing, they own the rights to exclusively publish your book. Now, I hear people say, oh, no, I own all of my own rights. You own your own rights as far as copyright is concerned. When you create something, whether you create a book or you create, an article, an online document, when you create it, you are creating copyright just by creating it. You can, of course, additionally file copyright paperwork and pay a fee, and that protects you even further for copyright infringement. But publishing rights are a different thing. So people don't understand that, I find. Copyright, yes. You created it, it's yours, the copyright belongs to you. Publishing rights don't necessarily belong to you. If you're going with a traditional publishing house, they are going to own the publishing rights for life usually. And there's no way around that unless they contractually gave it to you in your book agreement, which most of the time they are not going to do because, of course, they make money when they sell your book, right? So they don't want to give up the right to publish your book and make money on your book. If you are a self-publisher, of course, many of the platforms out there will say, oh, let us give you a free ISBN. And that's lovely. And it's going to save you about $150 if you take their free ISBN. But now they exclusively own the rights to sell that version of your book. So you want to purchase your own ISBN, and you can do that by going to Bowker online and purchasing it yourself. Now, if you're in a hybrid publishing situation, like if you worked with a company like mine, as a hybrid publisher, we purchase the ISBN for our client. We register it to them in their book, and then in our agreements, it's clearly spelled out that they 100% own the rights to publish their book. I've seen a few hybrid publishers that will say, we own the rights for the first 5 years or the first 10 years, and then after that, those rights revert back to the author, and they can take their work wherever they'd like to go. The problem with not owning your own publishing rights is if something happens to that publisher, say a small publishing house that goes out of business or someone retires and nobody wants to purchase the company, whatever the circumstances are, and no one ends up carrying on with that publishing house, now you have a publishing house who owns the right to publish your book, but they don't exist any longer. They've gone away, but you still do not own the rights to publish your own book because you forfeited that when you took that free ISBN from them. So just make sure you're either okay with that publisher holding those rights forever, or in your contractual agreement with them, your contract says, here's at what point you, the author, own the rights to publish wherever you'd like. If you published with Rosedale Publishing, you always own the right to go publish somewhere else if you'd like, because that is author-centric and how we roll, my friend. Okay, I don't want to totally run out of time, but let's hop right into the top 5, the most common mistakes that people make when they're writing and publishing a book. Number 1, they have no project analysis. They have not taken the time to understand why they're writing this book. They have no clarity on what their unique value proposition and their unique idea is. People think this is fluff and they just tend to skip over it. So my savvy tip on this is always strategically and intentionally plan your book project to help ensure its success. Now, for sure, your book is not the only one of its kind out there. 100%. I promise, unless you're writing some super obscure thing, maybe, sumo wrestlers in tutus or something so obscure that nobody else is writing about it, there might still be someone else writing about it, I promise. For sure, most books, this one is my last book, 8 Ways to Mind Your Own Business, Strategy and Mindset for the New Entrepreneur. I promise you, there are hundreds or thousands of people writing about strategy for new entrepreneurs, mindset for new entrepreneurs. I promise you. We had to find a way to stand out and be different, so we had to understand, why were we writing this book? Who was this book for? So that we could speak to them in an effective way. Say the things that they needed to hear to have true transformation or true change, that it really was a valuable tool for them. Before we ever even created this book, my co-author, Debbie Clement Large, she's in the UK, before we even created this, we wrote one word. We sat down and figured out what our strategy was. What is our project strategy? Let's do an analysis on, so that we are sure to create the right book, to do what we want it to do. And that's all I'm talking about. Don't skip this. This is not fluff. You may end up writing the wrong book if you're not careful. So, number one, you want to have a good analysis right up front. The second common mistake that we see is having no project schedule. Having a clearly defined start and finish date to what you're doing is really important. Otherwise, I promise you, time is going to get away from you. So define your parameters. It's going to help you monitor your progress. Of course, you want to have a strategic plan around your publishing date. So here's my savvy tip for you on this. Creating milestones and deadlines for writing your book will keep you on track when life gets in the way. Because I promise you, life is going to get in the way. Writing a book is a process, and it's hard. It takes time, it takes commitment to get yourself in that seat on a regular basis, getting those words onto paper. That second phase of creation is often the longest for people, and when they skip phase one, the brainstorm and blueprint, when they skip that entirely, maybe because they don't realize they need it, it's super difficult to stay on task and stay focused when you're in that creative second phase of your book creation and publication, right? That piece where all the work happens, getting it out of your head and getting it onto paper. Now, if you're super organized as a person and you have a strategy just because that's the way your brain works, having a schedule is probably going to be second nature. You're going to create it automatically. But what I find with most of my authors is they say, okay, I have all this content in my head, all these ideas for creating this book, all these things I want to say, and I've been working on it for about 10 years. Or I've been thinking about doing it for about 5 years. Or, I've really been trying really diligently for the last year, and I'm just not making any progress. And it's just because they don't have a schedule. They don't have a plan. If you say, I'm going to work on my book this week for sure when I have some downtime. Well, I promise you're not ever going to have some downtime, because things are always going to come up, especially if you have found yourself writing in circles or you don't know where to go next. If you have a little bit of writer's block, that usually stems from poor planning, not having a good brainstorm and blueprint to start with, but also not having a schedule in place. So, my recommendation, of course, for that is that you write out a schedule, an actual schedule that says, oh, look, it's Monday at 3 o'clock. I'm writing for the next hour, or I'm writing for the next 30 minutes, or whatever it is that you can carve out of your life, out of your schedule, to get some work done. I personally find that 30 minutes isn't enough for me creatively. Once I get those creative juices going, I can tend to go on and on. You can't, maybe, if you don't have time in your schedule for that, but just allow yourself some flexibility. If you know, I'm going to write when the kids are in bed, dinner dishes are done, whatever it is, and then just go until my brain is done. If that works for you, I think that's a great way to write. Some people get up early in the morning before the hustle and bustle of the day starts to get some writing done. I'm not a morning person, so that doesn't work for me. But just think about how you, as a person, how you best function and set a schedule around how you best function. It's kind of like exercising. Probably for the last, almost 30 years that my husband and I have been together, he has wanted to get up early and have us go exercise. And as a non-morning person, I'm not into that. I exercise later in the day. By the end of the day, he's exhausted. It doesn't work well for him. So really, just embrace who you are. Give yourself some grace and write when it works for you. Have a schedule. I promise you, you can get your work done. Okay, what's the next one? Having no project brainstorm. If you haven't spent the time getting those ideas out of your head and onto paper, you are going to find yourself writing in circles. This is where you're going to decide how things fit together, right? Not everything is going to fit. So here's where you're going to set aside those nuggets, and they may be brilliant nuggets, by the way, but they don't necessarily fit. Here's my savvy tip for you on this one. All of your great ideas might not fit into your book. Set them aside for your next book or turn this book into a series. You may have heard me say this before as well. When you have the kind of brain who's always coming up with ideas, you need an idea book. It's a digital, but I call it my idea vault. It's where brilliant ideas that come to me, whenever they come to me, it's where they get stored and they stashed away. If I'm sitting in a doctor's office or I'm someplace where I have some extra time and I could be doing something, I can just pull out my phone, log into my idea vault, and capture those thoughts. If you're sitting there for 30 minutes or an hour waiting on something to happen, that is a great time to just let your mind dig deep into things. Put them in your idea vault. So if you say, I think these are going to go in my book, put them somewhere. There's some great tools, some apps on your phone that you can use to capture those. I often will capture things in Voxer, which is not really for capturing ideas, but it's easy on the fly because I can just push the button and talk to myself. I just save myself a Voxer. Say, hey, you know what? I have this great idea for blah, 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 whatever it is. Get it out of my head so that I'm not trying to remember it for later, but I have captured it somewhere. And then I just go back and look at the end of the day. I'm kind of an end of the day person where I dump everything from the end of the day and plan what's going to happen the next day. Okay, tomorrow I need to do X, X, and X. If it didn't get accomplished today, it gets rolled over to tomorrow's list, those kinds of things. That's the perfect place to get some stuff, to brainstorm some stuff. Get it out of your head, stick it somewhere so you don't lose it. I find that a super helpful tool, especially when I'm working on a book. And I find my authors really find that helpful as well. Okay, so not having a brainstorm is super important, but it is not as important as not having a blueprint. No project blueprint. That's a huge mistake I see all the time that especially brand new authors are making. This is where we create a cohesive message with all of that stuff that we have to say. We pull all of the pieces together into a story form so that it will actually connect with our reader, our potential reader. Then, of course, we want to make sure that we're delivering on our promise. We say we're going to write a book about X. We want to make sure that we really do include everything that we want to say in that book. And then, of course, my savvy tip here is that pulling the pieces of every book project together can be really challenging. So you need a blueprint to follow as you write your book. It's just like having a blueprint to build a house. Now, you may not be a builder, but I'm sure you're aware of how the blueprint works, right? Somebody creates the architect, whoever creates a blueprint of what the house is going to look like. You may have some renderings that you can look at to see visually what it's going to look like, but the builder is going to build off of a set of blueprints. It's where they look and say, oh, this wall is this long, and this wall is this long. The roof pitch is X. This is where the bathroom goes. Here's where all of the pieces fit together. And that's why I've called this particular part of the book creation process blueprint, because it's literally what it is. It's taking all of that stuff that we collected in the brainstorming piece, the brainstorming process, and putting it in a way that makes sense as you write your book, so that you don't have random thoughts in random places. Remember, the goal is to have your reader connect and engage with your book and be drawn through the process. So if things are out of order, you're going to potentially lose someone along the way. Here's the beautiful part of having a blueprint. When you're done, that blueprint is literally your outline for your book, and it is your table of contents. This is where you know everything is in the right order, and you know in the order that you're going to write it. Because it's in the table of contents. When you sit down to start the creative writing piece of your book, it's as simple as saying, step 1, chapter 1. What did I say that I was going to put in chapter 1? Going to your blueprint, your outline, and saying, oh, chapter 1 is going to cover these topics. Now, if you've done a really thorough job of your blueprinting, you also know the stories that are going to be in chapter 1, any anecdotes or analogies, whatever you want to give the reader to help bring that point home. You already know what that's all about. Now, when you sit down to write, it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to write about this. Now, doesn't that make sense that would help avoid writer's block? So that when you sit down, you always know exactly what you're supposed to be writing about? Now, that doesn't guarantee that it's going to flow 100% perfectly all the time, but it always gives you a starting point when you start writing, and that is writer's gold, my friend. I promise you, if you are already writing, you understand that, you know that. Okay. We're almost out of time, so I don't want to run out of time to talk about accountability. No project accountability is a huge mistake that I see, super common. Accountability really does matter. It is about having someone else hold your feet to the fire. It's easy to make excuses to yourself, but it is not as easy to make excuses to somebody else who's there specifically to hold your feet to the fire. So my savvy tip on this, of course, is when you're writing your book, find someone who is willing to hold your feet to the fire. Accountability is going to help you get the writing done. Now, accountability can be in the form of a writer's group where you live locally. Sometimes you can find them meeting at local libraries. You can find online groups that meet. You could literally have a group meet on Zoom. It doesn't matter if you're in person or not. It's really just about people coming together who are on a common journey together, who have agreed to hold each other accountable. I have 2 accountability groups that I'm currently in right now. They have nothing to do with writing. They have something else in my life that it has to do with. But I show up every week knowing that what I said last week I was going to do, somebody in that group is going to say, Clara, did you do what you said you were going to do? And during the week, I think, I better do that because I told my accountability group I would have that done, right? See how that makes a difference? So if you have to show up every week and say, oh yeah, I was going to write 30 minutes this week, but I didn't do it again. You know, it doesn't take very many times of showing up and going, yeah, I didn't do that, to make you change, either drop out of your accountability group or change that habit and say, I'm going to do it this week because I want to show up next week and say, yes, I did get that done. And a supportive, caring accountability group will encourage you and be gracious, not hostile or shame you for not getting it done. So choose your accountability group carefully. Then, of course, you can hire a professional you can pay to hold your feet to the fire. I promise you, I would hold your feet to the fire, and so would anyone else that you've hired to help you with that. Super important to have some form of accountability. Okay, so there you have it. Those are truly the 5 top reasons that I run into all the time that people give me or I discover on their behalf that they haven't gotten their book done. From start to finish, all of the pieces matter. So my savvy tip to you is find the right people or services to educate you and support your efforts while protecting your rights. You want to make sure that the book that you create is authentically who you are and is the right tool for what you want the book to do. Probably generate leads for your business, ministry, cause, or brand. Whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with a book, we want to make sure that we create the right book. And these are the top 5 mistakes that I see people making that are stopping them from getting that work done and published and out into the world where it can make a difference. Okay, we ran out of time way quicker than I wanted to today, but I just want to really quickly say, if you are looking for someone to hold you accountable, if you would like someone to help you, I invite you to hop over to clararose.com/waitlist, and I will send you out an invitation the next time the Savvy Mentor Program is open. The Savvy Author Mentor Program is open if you want to participate in that. We have a wonderful accountability program built right in, but we don't start there. We start by helping you through the 3 phases of book creation, and specifically to avoid the 5 common mistakes that people make when they're trying to create their book. We get that analysis done. We get a brainstorm and blueprint done so that your book is the right kind of book. We help you through the writing of your content. We have some editing services available to you. We're going to educate you about all of your publishing options, of course. We're going to talk you through what it means to effectively promote your book so that people know that you even have a book coming out. And then, of course, an ongoing plan for sales, because they don't just happen. Just because you write the book doesn't mean that people are going to buy it. People have to know that it's out there, so you have to have a step-by-step plan for getting it out to the world. And that's what we do. And then, of course, accountability, which I can't say enough about the value of having accountability, having something specific that is going to hold your feet to the fire and push you toward the completion of your book project and a launch to make your dreams come true as an author. Okay, I am truly out of time now, but I will see you guys next week, same time, right here. I have one of my authors who's going to talk about her new book that's coming out. Super excited for her. Okay, don't forget clararose.com/waitlist. Just give me your name and your email address. I promise I'm not going to spam you or send you a bunch of junk. Just an invitation to join us the next time we launch. So there you have it. All right, my friend, I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me once again here on the Savvy Author Show.